Another player I'm all in on is Raheem Mostert. RB28, ADP round 9, makes absolutely zero sense. You know what the most predictive stat is when it comes to predicting future fantasy points? It's fantasy points. Raheem Mostert suffered an injury in week 16 last year. Up until that point, only 3 players ranked above him in total fantasy points: Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb. All those players are going early round 1. Raheem Mostert, for some reason, round 9. Make it make sense. Sometimes it's really just that simple. What? What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
Hey there, I'm Scott Barrett of FantasyPoints.com. These are my must draft and top value running backs on Underdog right now. So this is primarily a best ball video, but the top 3 running backs right now are all phenomenal picks in best ball. Amazing picks in start sit. Christian McCaffrey certainly deserves to be the first overall pick. He outscored the next closest running back by 35%. But I also really like that next closest running back. Breece Hall finished last year as the RB2 in fantasy. He did that in week 1, just being 9 months removed from ACL surgery. He did that while not getting a lot of volume through the first 11 weeks of the season. He ranked just 27th in XFP per game, expected fantasy points per game. He did that on one of the worst offenses in football. The Jets trailed on 66% of their offensive plays. That ranked second worst. They averaged just 2.4 red zone carries per game, which ranked dead last. Their offensive line is dramatically improved, and most importantly, they're going from the worst quarterback in football to a quarterback who won MVP in each of his last 2 healthy seasons. And Breece Hall's volume was ridiculously good last year, particularly at the tail end of the season. Factor in the QB upgrade, Breece Hall has the chance to go nuclear, and obviously so does Bijan Robinson. The upgrade from Zach Wilson to Aaron Rodgers looks a lot like the upgrade from Arthur Smith to anyone. Last year, Bijan Robinson handled just 27% of the team's carries inside the red zone. What does his usage look like this year? Well, he told us he's going to be used a lot like Christian McCaffrey. This is one of the most talented running backs in the football, grossly misused last year. All 3 running backs, great picks in best ball, amazing picks in start sit. After the top 3, I like Jonathan Taylor a lot. I think people are sleeping on him. He came into the season seriously banged up, but he earned his first start in week 7. And from week 7 on, he ranked tied for 3rd in fantasy points per game. He did this with only a 66% snap share while competing for playing time with Zach Moss, who's no longer there. After Taylor, I like this little range right here, these 3 running backs. Achane averaged 7.8 yards per carry last year, the most ever by a running back and by a wide margin. Sure, the volume wasn't really there, but he was a rookie. More importantly, I think people are forgetting he was a track athlete in college, so he was never really given the opportunity to bulk up. He was a little thin, low BMI. I think that's going to change this offseason. And then most importantly, do you know what typically follows a freakishly hyper-efficient season? Is way more volume. It's because this guy is really good, deserves more volume. People were calling Alvin Kamara a regression candidate after his freakishly efficient rookie season. I think we see way more work for Achane, who has the potential to really break fantasy football leagues. Last year, Kyren Williams led all running backs in fantasy points per game from week 7 on. Right now, he's just priced as the RB8. So I know people are worried about a committee with the new running back, Blake Corum, but that seems fully priced in. So if it is a committee, perfectly priced. If it's not, and we know Sean McVay likes to deploy a bell cow running back, he's a terrific value with league-winning upside. And that's really everything we've heard from the team thus far. This was primarily a depth signing. Maybe Kyren takes a few plays off here or there, but it really does seem like he's going to be their guy. But the best value in this range, particularly for best ball, just due to his safety, I think is Derrick Henry. In a start sit league, I might want to chase upside a little bit more, but so safe in a best ball league. He's finished top 3 in fantasy points per game in 4 of the last 5 seasons. He goes from one of the worst offensive lines in football to one of the best. He goes from an offense that rarely ever made it to the red zone to an offense that loves using running backs inside the red zone, and they get there a lot. Derrick Henry is one of the most game script sensitive players in fantasy football history. Since 2018, he averages 22.5 fantasy points per game in wins, just 12.3 in losses. And guess what? He goes from a team that was always losing in their games to a team that led more frequently than anyone else. By all key metrics, he did not lose a step last season. There's the new hip drop tackle rule, which makes it more difficult for smaller defensive backs to tackle bigger, bruising running backs and tight ends. I think Derrick Henry is going to benefit more from this than any other player. And he played on just 53% of the team snaps last season. And by all accounts, John Harbaugh wants to deploy him as a bell cow, wants to get him involved in the passing game, doesn't want to take him off the field. Add it all up, and this one's easy. Really safe pick, great value, underrated upside. Isiah Pacheco is a near must-draft pick at this ADP. Like Derrick Henry, he's exceedingly safe. Including the postseason, he averaged 18.5 half-point PPR fantasy points per game over his last 7 healthy games. That would have ranked 3rd best among all running backs last year. Jerick McKinnon isn't going to be returning to the team, so I think we should expect him to continue to be involved in the passing game, not be taken off the field as much in the red zone. Next up is Aaron Jones, who's going 2 rounds later than Isiah Pacheco, but I might like him just as much. He's priced as the RB19, even though he's paid off that ADP in 5 of his last 6 seasons. He did that while working in a gross committee backfield in Green Bay. People are going to point to last year's disappointing results, but you need to remember he wasn't really healthy at any point last season, or maybe not healthy until week 16 when he had 3 straight 100-yard games. No fantasy eligible player spent more time on the injury report listed as questionable than Aaron Jones. And so even if he's just a committee back in Minnesota, he's a fine value. But I see significantly more upside. I think he could be a bell cow for the Vikings. Because let's not forget, the Vikings tried to use Madison as their bell cow. 73% snap share in week 1, 75% in week 2, 80% in week 3. That usage just didn't stick because, well, Madison's not very good. But I'm pretty sure Aaron Jones is. Jonathon Brooks is a player I am all in on. And I'm all in on him for the same reason I was all in on Rachaad White last year. It's just the value of this Dave Canales bell cow role where he's going to be an every down player utilized heavily in the passing game as well as on the ground. Last year, Rachaad White ranked 3rd among all running backs in carries. He had a 79% snap share, 70 targets, and he wasn't very efficient. So I'm envisioning Jonathon Brooks in the Rachaad White role, except he's much better than Rachaad White. I think at this cost, I'm going to be drafting him around early every single time. If his ADP moves up around, I'm drafting him around early. If his ADP moves back around, maybe his rehab doesn't go fully according to plan, I'm still drafting him around early. Another player I'm all in on is Raheem Mostert. RB28, ADP round 9. Makes absolutely 0 sense. You know what the most predictive stat is when it comes to predicting future fantasy points? It's fantasy points. Raheem Mostert suffered an injury in week 16 last year. Up until that point, only 3 players ranked above him in total fantasy points: Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb. All those players are going early round 1. Raheem Mostert, for some reason, round 9. Make it make sense. Sometimes it's really just that simple. My favorite late round running back has to be MarShawn Lloyd. RB45 ADP, round 12. This has historically been a split backfield, either nearly perfectly even or 60-40 best case scenario. Matt LaFleur has told us he has no plans of changing that philosophy, even after the team signed Josh Jacobs. So to me, it seems Jacobs is overpriced. MarShawn Lloyd as the potential RB2 is the clear value. We know AJ Dillon is terrible. I think finally so does Green Bay. They signed Dillon to a 1-year prove-it deal with almost nothing guaranteed. Lloyd was the second best running back in this class, according to our rookie draft guide. Director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, thought he was the best running back in the class. And perhaps most importantly, the vibes are insane on MarShawn Lloyd. The Packers view him as their Aaron Jones replacement. Remember, that was the more valuable role. They love his pass catching potential, and they want to get him up to speed immediately and use him as much as possible right away. Well, there you have it. That's my must draft top value running backs to target in underdog best ball drafts. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn your notifications on. Appreciate you watching.